The storm had rolled into the city without warning. By midnight, the streets were rivers, and the wind rattled against the hospital windows as though begging for shelter. Inside, the sterile halls glowed with fluorescent light, buzzing softly, but for Anna, it was just another lonely night on duty. She stood by the emergency entrance, her thin cardigan no match for the cold air sneaking in through every time the automatic doors slid open. The chill seeped into her bones, but she didn't complain. She never did. Complaining meant someone would look at her, and Anna preferred to remain invisible. At 26, she had learned the art of blending into the background. Her parents had passed away years ago, her brother moved abroad and barely spoke to her, and her friends from nursing school had drifted into marriages and families of their own. Anna had no one waiting at home, no warm lights flickering in a window, no voice asking how her day had been. Just a small rented room with peeling wallpaper and a bed that creaked at the slightest touch. She survived by filling her life with work. The more hours she picked up, the less time she had to notice the silence of her existence. The hospital became her refuge, where her hands were always needed, where her compassion filled the gaps left by her own emptiness. The storm outside roared, and Anna wrapped her arms tighter around herself, rubbing warmth into her hands. She was waiting for an ambulance that had been delayed by the flooding streets. Rules dictated that someone be ready at the entrance, and Anna always volunteered for the tasks others disliked. She never complained about the cold, the rain, or the monotony. The doors slid open suddenly, and the storm seemed to rush in with a man who was unlike anyone she had ever seen. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried an air of quiet power even though his suit was drenched and clinging to him like a second skin. His hair was plastered to his forehead, his shoes squeaking against the tiled floor, but his presence was undeniable. His face, strikingly handsome despite exhaustion, was drawn with worry. Yet it wasn't his appearance that made Anna's breath catch. It was the small bundle in his arms. The little girl, no older than 5, was wrapped in a soaked blanket, her pale face speaking out. She looked fragile, her lips trembling as if even her tiny body could not withstand the fever ravaging her. "Please," the man's deep voice cracked, filled with desperation. "She has a high fever." I didn't know where else to take her. For a moment, Anna simply stared at him, the image searing itself into her heart. A powerful man, broken by helplessness, cradling his daughter as though she were the only thing keeping him alive. Training snapped Anna back into focus. She rushed to him, gently taking the girl from his arms. "Follow me," she instructed firmly, though her voice softened when she looked down at the child. "You're safe now, sweetheart." The man followed close behind, his wet shoes squealing against the polished floor. He didn't care about the water dripping from his suit, didn't care about the attention he drew from startled staff. His eyes never left his daughter. Anna guided them into the pediatric unit and called for the attending physician. While waiting, she quickly checked the girl's temperature. Her heart clenched at the reading of 103.88 degrees F. The fever was dangerous. She dampened a cloth and wiped the child's forehead, speaking to her in the same calm, melodic tone she used with all her patients. The girl whimpered and shifted weakly but did not push Anna away. That, more than anything, made the father pause. When the doctor arrived, he examined the child and confirmed that with proper medication, rest, and hydration, she would recover. Relief washed over the man's face, his tense shoulders finally sagging. He sank into a nearby chair, burying his face in his hands for a moment as if the weight of the world had been lifted. But Anna didn't leave. Even after the doctor walked away, she stayed by the girl's side, adjusting the blanket, whispering small comforts, humming a lullaby she half remembered from her childhood. The little girl's fever-glazed eyes fluttered open briefly. Her small hand reached out and grasped Anna's fingers. "Don't go," she whispered weakly before sleep pulled her under again. Anna's throat tightened. She squeezed the child's hand gently. "I'm not going anywhere." It was only then she realized the man was watching her intently. His eyes, a deep, storm gray like the weather outside, were fixed on her every movement. He looked at her as though she were something rare, something precious. "You're broken bar good with her," he finally said, his voice quieter now, stripped of its earlier urgency. "She hasn't let anyone close since a broken bar." He trailed off, his jaw tightening, the words catching in his throat. Since her mother passed away 2 years ago. Anna's chest ached at the raw grief in his tone. She glanced down at the child, whose small fingers were still curled around her own. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. The man gave a slight nod, as if acknowledging her sympathy but not lingering on it. Instead, he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his gaze dropping to the floor. For a long time, silence filled the room, broken only by the steady beep of the monitor and the faint patter of rain against the window. When he finally lifted his head again, his eyes locked on Anna with a desperation that startled her. His voice, though quiet, carried the weight of a confession he had been holding in for far too long. "You need a home, don't you?" Anna blinked, confused. "What, a broken bar?" "I can see it in your eyes," he continued, his voice rough, almost pleading. "You carry loneliness with you. I recognize it because I carry it too. But there's something else. A broken bar." He looked at his daughter, then back at Anna. "I need a mother for her, for Emily." The words struck her like lightning, leaving her frozen in place. She stared at him, trying to process what he had just said. It was absurd, unreal. A stranger, a man who clearly came from a world of power and wealth she could never touch, was offering her something she had never dared to dream of: a home, a family, a purpose beyond her sterile shifts and empty apartment. But it was also terrifying. Anne wanted to laugh at the absurdity, cry at the rawness of his plea, and run from the intensity all at once. Her mind screamed that this was madness. Yet when she looked down at Emily, who still clung to her hand even in sleep, something inside her shifted. This wasn't about logic, it was about need. His need, the child's need, and maybe, just maybe, her own. But Anna said nothing. She couldn't. The words had stolen her breath, leaving her standing in silence with her heart racing, the storm still raging outside, and the faint warmth of Emily's hand anchoring her to the moment. For the first time in years, Anna felt as though her life was standing on the edge of something vast and unknown, and she had no idea whether to step back or fall. The days that followed felt unreal to Anna. She returned to her shifts as though nothing had happened, yet the echo of Adrian Hale's words refused to leave her. "You need a home, and I need a mother for my daughter." It replayed in her mind when she sterilized instruments, when she walked the long hospital corridors, when she unlocked her small apartment at night and stepped into silence. She had lived with loneliness for so long that she almost wore it like a second skin, but now, the memory of Emily's small hand clutching hers had cracked something open inside her. And Adriana, his storm-gray eyes, his broken voice, his desperate honesty lingered in her thoughts more than she cared to admit. She told herself it was ridiculous. Men like Adrian Hale didn't belong in her world. He was a CEO. A man whose face sometimes appeared in business magazines on the racks at the hospital gift shop. She was a nurse, struggling to pay rent. Their paths weren't meant to cross beyond that one stormy night, but fate seemed to have other plans. 3 days later, as Anna was finishing her rounds, she spotted a familiar figure in the hospital cafe. Told the copyright Adrian. He wasn't in his immaculate suit this time, but a simple dark sweater that somehow made him look even more striking. His posture was rigid, his gaze fixed out the rain-streaked window as though he were waiting for something or someone. Her heart stuttered, and before she could decide whether to approach him, he stood and walked toward her. "You didn't answer me that night," he said quietly, his eyes searching hers. Anna swallowed hard. "Because I didn't know what to say." "It wasn't a broken bar. It isn't something you can just ask." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Maybe not, but I know what I saw." "Emilia," she held your hand. "She hasn't done that with anyone since a broken bar since her mother." His voice cracked, and he paused to compose himself. "She smiled at you, Anna. She needs that. She needs you." Anna shook her head, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I'm just a nurse. I don't belong in your world." He studied her for a long moment, and then, instead of pressing further, he said something unexpected. "Come to dinner." "Just dinner." "No promises, no decisions." "Meet her again outside of the hospital, please." It was the please that undid her. Against every instinct of self-preservation, Anna found herself standing at the gates of Adrian Hale's estate the following evening. The mansion loomed large, elegant yet intimidating, its windows glowing with warm light against the dusk. She had never felt more out of place in her life. The butler opened the door with practiced politeness, But before Anna could say a word, a small voice squealed, "Anna." Emily came running down the marble hallway, her golden curls bouncing, her little face light with joy. She threw her arms around Anna's legs, clinging to her as though they had known each other for years. Anna's heart melted. Kneeling down, she hugged the child tightly. "Hello, sweetheart," she whispered, her throat thick. Adrian appeared at the end of the hall, watching the scene unfold. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes softened when he saw his daughter's happiness. Dinner was both awkward and unexpectedly warm. Emily insisted on sitting beside Anna, chattering in the innocent, rambling way of children. She showed her drawings, asked endless questions, and laughed freely as something Adrian admitted later he hadn't heard in months. Anna noticed the way Adrian watched them, his gaze lingering not just on Emily but on her. It wasn't the look of a powerful man evaluating a business deal. It was something rawer, something more fragile. Over the next weeks, Adrian found excuses to bring Emily by the hospital. Sometimes it was for follow-up checks that Anna knew weren't truly necessary. Other times it was just to say hello. Slowly, Anna stopped resisting their presence in her life. Emily's laughter became the brightest part of her days, and Adrian's quiet strength to his surprising gentleness beneath the CEO's armor began to unravel her defenses. Still, Anna was terrified. One evening, after a long shift, she walked out to find Adrian waiting by the hospital entrance. He wasn't in a suit, but in jeans and a simple shirt. Somehow, that made him even more disarming. "Walk with me?" he asked. They strolled down the quiet, lamplit street. For a while, neither spoke. Then Adrian stopped. His voice was low, almost vulnerable. "I know what you're thinking, that I'm asking too much, too fast, that you don't belong in my world." But Anna, a broken bar, he turned to face her, his eyes piercing. "You belong with us, with me, with Emily. You give us something money can't buy, a home, a family." Anna's breath caught. Tears stung her eyes. "Adrian, I'm scared. What if I can't be what she needs? What if I fail her? What if I fail you?" He stepped closer, gently taking her hand and pressing it against his chest. His heartbeat was steady beneath her palm. "Then we failed together, but I would rather fail with you than live without you." The sincerity in his voice broke through the last of her walls. For so long, Anna had believed she wasn't worthy of love, of belonging, but here was a man offering her exactly that, and not perfection, not fairy tale promises, but something real. It didn't happen overnight. Anna hesitated, stumbled, questioned herself. There were moments when she wanted to retreat into her solitude, convinced she wasn't enough. But each time, Emily's laughter pulled her back, and Adrian's steady presence reminded her she wasn't alone anymore. One Sunday morning, Anna awoke in the guest room of the Hale mansion. Her guest room, though Adrian never hid that he hoped it would one day be more. She stepped into the garden, where Adrian was helping Emily chase butterflies. The sight stopped her in her tracks. Emily's giggles rang through the air, and Adrian's face, so often set in lines of seriousness, was lit with pure joy. For the first time, Anna realized this was what home felt like. Not walls or wealth, but love, connection, belonging. Emily spotted her and ran over, grabbing her hand. "Anna, come play with us." Adrian looked up, his eyes meeting hers across the garden. In that gaze, Anna saw not the CEO the world admired, but the man who had once carried his fevered daughter through the storm, desperate and afraid. The man who had whispered to her that he needed a mother for his child. And in that moment, Anna knew she had already said yes, and not with words, but with every beat of her heart. Weeks later, Emily stood between them in the sunlit garden, holding both their hands, giggling as Adrian kissed Anna's forehead. The fear that once haunted her was gone. She didn't feel like a stranger in his world anymore. She didn't feel like a nurse who didn't belong. She felt home. Because home wasn't a place, it was a family. And now, she finally had one.